All right, it's 7:01, and I call this meeting to order of the Concord's Comprehensive Sustainability and Energy Committee. We have a quorum. We also have a couple of guests that I'll just mention right off the bat. And then first, we have Michael Mcdonald joining us. Hello, Michael.
Hi.
Michael will be a new member on CSEC. I talked with him, Matt talked with him. He'll be replacing Julie, who, as you know, is stepping down because she left. And Matt, just to check in, Michael was approved last week, right?
He was. He needs to get sworn in if he hasn't.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So, Michael, if you're not sworn in, you can't vote. You're basically here as a guest. But we can talk later about the swearing in procedures. Pretty straightforward. And we also have Deborah Stark here from Deborah's Natural Gourmet. Hi, Deborah. Welcome. She's on the agenda. We'll get to that in a few minutes. So we'll start tonight with approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Karen, now I don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, that's my problem. All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
I have reviewed them, but I only have a couple of minor points that I have not sent. If I could comment on those right now.
Sure thing.
Pamela Katie, if you could check spelling of her name.
Yep, got that one. Thank you.
Okay. And then the other, where we talk about the residential and business, the home energy scorecard is mentioned. I believe I also brought up that there's a similar thing for many businesses. The EPA also has a portfolio manager that comes with scoring for many common types of businesses. I'm not sure exactly where it goes in there, but I believe I brought that up.
Yeah.
I have one note. On page 2, where it talks about the Newton Energy Coach.
Yeah.
The Newton Energy Coach.org, not .com.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Seconded.
All in favor, raise your right hand.
Right hand.
Looks unanimous to me. Thank you, Karen. It's pretty darn good. Just a couple of minor edits. Okay, moving on. Next item is the chair's update. So I have a few things to report there. Already mentioned Michael, who will be joining us. Michael, would you care to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to CSEC?
Sure. So I just want to say I did receive a letter from the board today.
Great.
Acknowledging that they had approved me, and I just need to go down there and get sworn in. So I do have that, and I think I understand the process. I just basically have to bring the letter down, and I'll get sworn in and signed in, and then I'll be a voting member.
Yep.
So my background is probably split somewhere between water and energy. I've done a lot of consulting in the water and wastewater field, and toward the end of that half of my career, I'll say, I started getting into energy. So mostly energy at water facilities and wastewater facilities. And then I started getting more into buildings and commercial and industrial, not so much residential, but mostly C&I. And worked for the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority for some time as the energy manager there, and am currently with National Grid under their working in their energy efficiency program. So, I've done a fair amount, both technically and policy-wise, in terms of energy efficiency at the retail level and demand response and capacity engagement with Ice Snow New England at the wholesale level. So, pretty much run the gamut from detailed energy engineering evaluations at the detailed equipment level to the higher level policy and some research also. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's great. That's a strong background. I'm looking forward to having you on the committee.
I'm looking forward to working here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, next I'd like to give a brief update on the town's status of hiring a new sustainability director. First, I want to acknowledge the efforts that Brad and Janet put in to assist in the evaluation process. There were a bunch of candidates. I forget the number, but it was substantial. I remember Kate telling me the first cut was the not overqualified, I'll say, but the excessively qualified group from the merely qualified. And then of that excessively qualified group, I think she narrowed it down to about 15. And then there were some written responses and then some interviews, and then they narrowed it down to 3. And now I think they've picked their person and they're trying to reel that person in. Kate is hoping to have that person on board in October. But as of, let's see, today's Tuesday, as of yesterday, that's when I heard this status. So it's going well. She's excited about this person. I don't know any details, but sounds encouraging. And I think it'd be great to have someone on board soon. Matt, I don't know if you have any more updates.
I don't have any more info. In fact, I learned from you.
Okay.
Do you
Good.
know, Jerry, if Kate is going to onboard her, sort of?
Good question. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm suspect she's got a process in mind. I know I want to talk to this person ASAP, but I'll check in with Kate, maybe next week or so and see how things are going, and then try and get on the agenda early on. Next item, wanted to update folks on. I was contacted by a reference librarian at the Concord Library. They're planning an event in a couple weeks, Climate Preparation Week or something like that. But anyway, they've got a number of things planned. The interesting thing to me was I was wholly unaware of this. And it kind of took me by surprise. And so she was contacting me to see if we were interested in participating. And I said, well, interested, yes. But practically speaking, no, it's a little too, time frame is a little too short for us, especially given that Janice Setti had an event going on last night. But they're interested in working with us going forward, which I think is a real positive thing. She said they're working with a group called CREW, Communities Responding to Extreme Weather. I was unaware of that organization too. So I think the good news here is there's a lot of stuff happening. There's different groups that are involved. I think that's all very positive. I think for me, and I think for probably a fair portion of the populace, sifting through it all to figure out who's doing what and what the differentiators are is substantial. And I think we as a committee may have that issue a little bit too. The other update I want to give is from CMLP. Make a long story short, they're progressing very well in their goals to reach completely carbon-free energy portfolio by 2030. And in fact, they're looking at pulling in that date. Laura Scott this past week went through quite a few details on it. Unfortunately, I didn't take sufficient notes to give you more concrete dates, but they're looking very positive on meeting that goal and even exceeding it. So that's a great thing for us.
Is that include their nuclear portfolio?
Yes, it does.
So the nuclear part is part of what they're retreating to get off of fossil fuels.
Well, yes and no. I wouldn't say they're retreating to it. I think it's a portion of the portfolio right now and for a number of years yet due to the power purchase agreements. This whole topic came up as CMLP has an opportunity to buy into a large solar farm that's planned to be built. I think it's Western Mass, although it may be upstate New York. But at any rate, to get in on that deal at a decent rate for a long time for carbon-free energy. So the town is moving forward, reducing the carbon content of the portfolio, largely through REC purchases, but also being opportunistic in looking at these other opportunities. Okay, that's all I've got for the CARES update. Anyone have any questions? Okay.
Do you happen to know what the company name is that is building the large solar array in Western Mass?
Hang on a minute. Let me see if I have that in my notes.
It's
While you're looking that up, I would
Yeah.
just say that there are many climate scientists who think that nuclear energy is essential in the transition to greenhouse gas-free energy.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the name or the location, but my notes say Granby in the Connecticut River Valley. It's one of the largest solar projects in New England, and it's a 25-year term with, according to CMLP, very competitive pricing.
sure.
Okay, Brad?
I got an update from Pamela Katie today about rebate uptake at CMLP, which is relative to the other side of the equation in terms of how much of that electricity we're using. I don't know if you want that to give that now or later.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stuff
Go ahead.
like that.
Actually, I had a question about the library, the Climate Preparedness Week. So what is it that they would, can you give us contact information, and what is it they're hoping that we could do with or for them in case any of us feel like we do have the time next week
Yeah.
to help them out? Who should we contact?
Can I get back to you on that?
Sure.
So I will do that. In terms of what they were looking for, I think it was a generic request initially to establish contact with us. I pointed out that a couple of years ago, I had contacted the library. So a couple of years ago, as a committee, we were looking at doing a number of presentations around your sustainable home. This is pre-COVID, and I had contacted the library if they would sponsor an event with us at the library, and they were very positive. And then COVID came and everything fell apart. But apparently this woman has been involved with sustainability programs through the library for a while. I'm sort of embarrassed to say I didn't know that anything was going on there.
What's her name?
David,
Right.
it's David Pogue. I mean, it's a guy who wrote a book and he's presenting something.
No. That's not the person who contacted me.
No, but the event, how to prepare for
Oh.
climate change.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, he's the speaker.
Yes, that's
It
right.
is-
That's the
right.
big event for them.
Who's the person that contacted you, out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's what I'm attempting to look up. I'm gonna see if I can find it quickly. I'm not succeeding. So I'll need to get back to you, both of you, on that. Okay,
So from what Pamela told me, and I'll try not to summarize this quickly, the so they have a number of rebate programs, and their uptake. So the number of people who apply for rebates is a subset of the total number of people who install stuff, or or electrify their homes. But it's pretty high subset, I think. And so in 2020, for air source heat pumps, there were a total of 37 rebates given. That's to be compared with the 250 number that we want to see per year installing, electrified heating systems. This year, we're only 2/3 the way through the year. There are 36. And which I find a little disappointing, but it is what it is. But maybe that means there's going to be, 50, or maybe more people put them in at the end of the year. Maybe there'll be more than that. So it's better than last year. That's presumably because of Concord Clean Comfort, etc. There are a whole bunch of other ones. That's probably one of the more important ones. There are no ground source heat pumps rebates this year, and there was one last year. Well, there were 7 the year before. That was part of the Heat Smart program, and one last year. We know whose that is. Then there were, solar is continuing to get some uptake. There were something like I believe 26 solar systems rebated so far this year, with 39 in the queue, which is much bigger than last year or the year before, or most years coming up to now. So solar seems to be doing quite well, thankfully.
But Brad, the rebates given do not mean necessarily the applications submitted. We should find out how many rejections. I'll guarantee you there are 20% rejections for all kinds of reasons. One, the contractor didn't know they installed the wrong equipment.
Right.
Two, they didn't do the formula correctly. There's a whole bunch of things, and believe me, I'm going through it again a second time now.
Okay,
and
that's
we have a very complicated process, very complicated.
Good feedback, and I will ask Pamela maybe I'll summarize these for next month and ask her for those numbers as well.
Yeah.
And there are just a few rebates for weatherization, and a couple of other little things, but those are the big hitters.
Isn't it true that the solar rebate at the federal level is something like 28% of the cost of the system this year, but it's going down to 21%?
It's 20, I think it's 26, and it's going down to 21.
Well,
It was extended by 1 year because of the pandemic.
there is an infrastructure bill coming through that is going
to
goes in the other direction. So I wouldn't speculate about next year.
Right.
I still contend the biggest challenge that we have is that the contractors are not aware of the program and or the process.
That could be. You might
I'm familiar with the equipment.
Yeah.
So honey, let's talk about that later, because this is where we can help.
Yeah, we should try and figure it out.
And so we should talk to Pamela or the Abode people about it. Didn't want to take too much time on that, but
okay. No, but that's good. It's good to hear statistics like this. I'm very interested in that and in tracking that, as this will come up a little later.
I had a follow-up, just which was on the Granby site. And so I'm pretty sure this is the project NexAmp.
Yeah.
And it's a great big project that's under construction. The more interesting thing is it does have integrated storage. So they have a lithium ion battery to capture and then discharge at peak times. So
that is interesting. That should enable them to charge premium pricing. I mean, I don't know how they're structuring their contracts, but they can charge more for their solar if they can guarantee delivery because they have a battery than if it's just whenever the sun is shining.
Yeah,
How many kilowatts is it supposed to be?
it's 4,700, 4,755.
4.7 megawatts.
Yeah, good size.
Yeah, that's great news. Whether we get on board as a town or
Going
not.
in
that's
with
good
other
news.
communities, other municipals to get part of this, capacity.
Okay, moving on. CMLP last evening had a program on, as they call it, climate-friendly homes and vehicles. And several of us on the committee participated in this, Janet, Sharon, and I don't know if anyone else was there. Doug, I guess, was there. But Sharon and Janet and I were on the EV panel. Janet, since you were the moderator, can you talk a little bit about what happened and how many attended and that sort of stuff?
Sure. And the first, I was a moderator for the EV question and answer panel. And the first one overlapped with the EV 101. And that only happened to be one person who was interested in answering questions. But she had a lot of questions. We had a lot of answers, and the time didn't seem to be wasted. In the second panel, there were 7 people. At least one was from Wellesley, not Concord, but still had good questions. And we answered a number of questions, and I don't think it's necessary to talk about, the issues that we discussed.
Right. So the over 180 people signed up for this event, which I think Janet was pretty pleased with that. Unfortunately, there was a limit which she was unaware of in terms of how many people could attend via Zoom, and I think it capped at 100. So she's in the process of trying to arrange another
It's the 20th.
other meeting. So it's set for the 20th?
Monday, the 20th at 7 o'clock.
Okay. So hopefully many of those who could not attend on last night, I guess, will be able to attend next Monday. I felt there was pretty good interest from the people who attended. So that was encouraging. I don't know how the rest of you interpret 180 signups, but I thought that was pretty good.
For one independent event, I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. And probably if they had had it in person, they wouldn't have had nearly that many people.
Possibly.
Doug,
Hopefully
were
we'll-
you on one of the heat pump?
I went to the heat pump sessions and I was with Gregory Tish, I think his name was. He's one of the
Jeffrey.
okay. And he's one of the abode coaches that he's the coach that doesn't coach. And also Kim Stark, I think. Kip Stark.
Slack.
Kim Slack.
Kim Slack, okay, yeah. And there was some pretty good conversation about heat pumps. I think for me, what it did, it sort of gave me a chance to see what the center of the questions that were being asked were and the kinds of responses that the people were getting. Because a lot of people were there that were not, they needed heat pump 101. They didn't really know the background of how heat pumps work and why they work the way they do. So that was a good education for them.
Is the event, the Monday event publicized somewhere?
It came to me in an email from Jan apologizing profusely for not having allowed enough people to get in. I think she sent it to everybody that signed up for the event.
But I don't think there was a link on that email, was there? I was thinking there was that she's still in the planning stages, and I think there'll be a follow-up email with a link.
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
Probably the licensing. Zoom has limits on simultaneous access licensing deals. You can't have, if you want to have an interactive meeting, you cannot have more than a certain number, depending on what your licensing deal is.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on last night's event? Okay. Next, we have a citizen proposal from Deborah Stark. Deborah contacted me about the issue she'll talk about, and so I invited her to come talk to the committee. So Deborah, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jerry. I will say that it's about my bedtime now, so if I nod off while I'm talking, just, poke me.
So actually, first, Deborah, one material thing. Please identify yourself and your address.
Okay, so Deborah Stark of Deborah's Natural Gourmet, which is at 98 Commonwealth Avenue in West Concord.
Thank you.
I actually live in Acton now. I had to sell my home in Concord in order to keep the store going. So my address in Acton is 9 Pondview Drive in Acton. All right. And my agenda item for tonight is how to reduce single-use plastic by allowing people to bring in containers from home, and those are called returnables, to fill with bulk foods. So part of the town's mandate, we all know, is to reduce and reuse, to send less waste to landfills. I really believe that returnables can play a pivotal role in making that happen. It's such a simple thing to send less plastic to landfills, but we haven't really figured out how to do it. And so I think bringing containers from home will reduce that use of new plastic, but it turns out that returnables are against the law in Massachusetts. Who knew? I didn't know. We've been allowing it for 30 years in our store until the pandemic hit and we had to dismantle the whole bulk department. And when we were talking with the Board of Health about reinstituting it and making a zero waste store in our expansion next door, that's how I found out. So with the exception of one, there is one exception that does allow returnables, and I'll address that in a minute. But just to clarify, returnables are for food. It doesn't go for bulk detergents. It doesn't go for bulk beverages because the beverage lobby is very powerful. It's just for bulk foods. So I'd like to reference the issue. The issue is cross-contamination and poor hygiene. So again, more on that in just a bit. But I do want to state that I think cross-contamination pales against the risk of plastics in our world and how it affects human health. So there's so many studies out there. I'm only going to reference one, which was done in 2019, before I get to my ask of you all. The study was called Plastic and Health, the Hidden Cost of a Plastic Planet. And it was written by a consortium of nonprofits led by the Center for International Environmental Law. I also sent Jerry a graphic handout, which I found that I thought was pretty spectacular. And I don't know if he's had a chance to share all of that with you yet. But that said, in the study in 2019 said that every minute, 1 million plastic bottles are purchased and 2 million plastic bags are used and typically thrown away within 30 to 60 seconds. So we know that plastic and the small particles called microplastic that it breaks down to never go away. And the study said microplastics are found even in remote corners of the world and in animals and humans alike. And the average person is said to ingest 70,000 microplastics each year. And that to me is just so shocking. They and the study say, so the microplastics, according to the study, and I quote, enter the human body via direct exposures through ingestion or inhalation, and which are linked to an array of negative health outcomes, including cancer, cardiovascular diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic inflammation, autoimmune conditions, neurodegenerative diseases, and stroke. the science, however, of plastics and how, the science of plastics is in its infancy. But my question is, are we willing to be guinea pigs and to wait until the studies confirm that plastics are harming the planet and human health? I mean, I think we all believe that they are, and there is some science, but again, the science of confirming that is still in its infancy. So even with the limited data available, the health impacts of plastics throughout their life cycle is overwhelming. So, I thought, gosh, this is a no-brainer. We'll educate, we'll ask people to take a step in the right direction by encouraging everyone to reuse containers from home, whether they be glass or stainless or, used plastic, to fill with bulk foods. I really thought this was low-hanging fruit, just like when we all went to LED light bulbs. But our Board of Health said no, because the state of Massachusetts does not allow refilling containers from home with any foodstuffs. Our state interpreted an FDA's model food code refilling returnables differently than other states. So I can tell you there are other New England states that encourage returnables. Massachusetts' interpretation does not. The model food code, according to Thomas Neary of the FDA, with whom I spoke, said that the model food code refers specifically to hot food served at restaurants and returnables. And it's not a regulation, he said, but just a summary of findings, the best science of that day and of that time by academia, the FDA, and other interested parties to protect human health in that moment at that time. So our state took the model food code and expanded it as food code 105 CMR 590.000. So, returnables are prohibited according to this food code unless the consumer can prove that they bought that container originally from us. When they return it, we take it from them, we visually inspect it, we wash it, we sterilize it, we sanitize it, we dry it, and then we hand it back to them. And I'm just saying, can you imagine any business having the resources to do that? And can you imagine citizens being willing to jump through all those hoops? I mean, it's such a deterrent. It really makes life almost impossible as far as returnables in this state. And, even if we can prove all of that, what happens to all the containers we have at home? Those just go into landfills. And what happens to all the extra water it's needed to wash those things? For me, it's not common sense. So we had the issue right now of competing risks, the risk of cross-contamination and poor hygiene versus the greater risk to human health and the ecosystem from throwing away all those single-serve plastics. And I want to state here, I just want to stop and say, I know there's so many issues we have to work on to make our world a safer place and to keep humans safe. And this one, it seems like a very minor issue to everything else you're working on. But I really believe we have to start with some of that low-hanging fruit. So, and cross-contamination, how many reported cases of there are deaths by returnables? In our 30 years at Deborah's Natural Gourmet, we have no reported case or death by allowing people to bring in their containers from home. And I've been using my mom's old glass jars to fill with lentils and sesame seeds for years. I've been bringing in a cloth bag to put in onions and potatoes. And under this regulation or this ruling, that's against the law as well. So along the lines, to take this a little further and make it, you realize how really nonsensical this whole thing is, we don't prohibit the use of canvas bags coming back into the store. We don't legislate pet owners who come in covered with pet hair, talk about unhygienic. We don't legislate or prohibit people from coming in with long hair that falls out and falls into our cheese case and over eggs. We don't rule or legislate people who come in and blow their noses and drop Kleenex on the floor. So, I mean, they're just so, we don't ask people when they've bathed. So why all of a sudden is this returnable so dangerous? I don't know. There are stores around this state that encourage returnables, and their boards of health look the other way. Our Board of Health has told us they will enforce strictly. I get that. I don't think we should ask anyone to break the law. You know, we all stop at red lights. But the food code, 105 CMR, et cetera, is really out of date. Instead of working within the framework of a food code that is actually harmful, I want our Board of Health to be proactive, and I want them to ask the state to reinterpret. I want our Board of Health to find a way to allow returnables today and not wait 4 or 5 years, which is the estimate that was given to me by the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. That's how long they said they thought it would take to change something at the state level. So, I mean, is a variance possible by our Board of Health? I don't know. So in summary, I want to say we're asking for your help. We need a letter to the Board of Health, before whom I go next Tuesday. And I think that would be a great start. I want the letter to ask them to lead the charge in changing the food code. I don't want them just to sit back and say, well, we can't do anything. That's the ruling. I want them to say to the higher ups at the state, this is the ruling and it doesn't make sense anymore. We know better now. Let's change it. So we know that plastics are a greater danger to human health than contamination from my jar at home. And I just want to remind us all that Concord was the first town in the country to ban single-use plastic water bottles. Returnables, I see, as the next step. And if we don't take this step, it does not bode well for the work ahead. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
So Deborah's ask is for us to provide a letter to the Board of Health on this topic. I'd like to open it up for discussion. If anyone has any thoughts, pro, con, or otherwise on the topic. Sharon?
Any chance that you've brought with you a letter that you'd like us to endorse?
Jerry asked me to draft one, and I sent it to him a couple of hours ago. But as I said, I'm not proud of the draft. It doesn't satisfy me. And I don't know what tone you all want to take, so I can't decide that for you. So Jerry has that, and he can just forward it all to you. And you can either get back to me and I can work on it more, or you can put your imprint onto it.
Right.
I'm thinking about the timing issue.
Yeah.
We can only deliberate as a board in a public meeting. So we can't individually, we can't shop something around and make changes to it. Somebody has to take ownership and take input from everybody and then send it out as a public thing that maybe we could vote on at our next meeting. If we did that, which we'd either have to create it right now during this meeting, or somebody takes ownership and we do it for the next meeting. That maybe doesn't fit with your ideal timeline, but perhaps would still be helpful. Looks like Brad wants to say something.
Yeah, go
And
ahead, Brad.
I think if we agreed on substance of a letter, which Jerry could read to us, we could charge him with making sure the tone fits with CSAC and vote on it tonight.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. You can authorize a member, if you trust them, to speak on your behalf.
Yeah, so I was going
That's really
to,
the most expeditious way to do it.
yeah, I was going to suggest something similar. I've done that in the past on another committee where the committee approves the general, not just general, the specific content and authorizes modest polishing of the result in order to get it delivered prior to the next meeting. So let me share what Deborah provided. Hold on here.
I told Jerry too, I was going to attach it as a PDF and as a Word doc, and I attached the PDF and then my Word doc went missing. So I have a Word doc about 2 iterations ago, but
So can everyone see the document?
Yeah,
Yes.
in your house.
Let me know when you want me to scroll up. No, I'll scroll halfway.
Yeah, ready.
That's good. Well, thank you.
I love it.
Okay.
It's like buried so deeply in the rules.
The one thing that I see is missing is that you're allowed to bring your coffee cup and that gets refilled. I mean,
Well,
where's the
that-
energy there?
Janet, that is allowed because that's a beverage.
I understand that it is
Yeah.
allowed, but it makes no sense.
Yeah. Henry Dane, who sometimes has this really great sense of humor, actually said, you know, and what about if I put an apple in my pocket, do I have to prove I bought the pans from you? And will you follow me home to see if my jar is clean?
Grocery stores also sell cloth bags for you to put your produce in.
Well, we were told by our Board of Health that we could not sell them. We could not allow people to put anything in those bags.
So as a straw man, is everyone comfortable with this letter?
Yeah.
Yes. And if I may make a comment, I mean, I think Deborah even soft sells some of the dangers of plastics in the sense of, if you look at communities in Asia where our recycled plastics end up,
Yeah.
they are devastated.
Yeah.
And you know, it's risk to us humans here, but it's such a big problem. So it's
Well, let me, in the interest of moving forward here, let me make a proposal and see how well this sits with everyone, including you, Deborah. So how about if I take pretty much what's written here, maybe not pretty much, what if I take what is written here, maybe edit it lightly or maybe not, consult with Deborah on her concerns, since this is, she's not entirely pleased with this. And to the extent that any edits we make are, don't change the content, but only change backup information or things like that. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I think we probably need a motion on this.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Motion would be to accept the letter as it is written with modifications to be consulted with Deborah about between now and Monday.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your
Well, I
hand.
would also suggest
Oh,
to
sorry.
add it to, submit the letter to the Board of Health in support of the citizen initiative or something.
Okay.
Right, you're adopting or accepting the letter. I guess that would just add your signature to the bottom, but are you going to do something with it?
Right. So do you feel we need a new motion for that? Because
Well, you could just add that verbiage at the end I just said.
well, we need to vote on that because where we are procedurally is we've had a motion, we've had a second, we're discussing that. So
Okay.
Let me make an
get off an
amendment
amendment.
to the motion.
Brad? Yeah.
Do what Matt said. And that's
Okay.
it.
So you're suggesting an amendment to
Submit the letter.
submit the letter to the Board of Health to add that to the document.
Right.
Okay, so that's the motion, the amended motion. All in favor of the amended motion? Raise your hand. All opposed? Doug, you still have your hand up. I take it you're not opposed.
No, not opposed, right.
Okay. All right. It passes.
Question for Deborah, though. Have you talked to any of the statewide groups like MCAN or Community Action Works, or there's a lot of groups that might be able to network other towns to do a similar letters?
I actually was in contact with a lot of stores around the state to find out what they do. We had a letter writing campaign and going on in our store, and some of these other stores did that too. I did contact legislators. I did contact some of the groups. And today, for instance, I was on the first meeting of I think the name is Renewable New England. And I did attend, and I did attend some things by the Conservation Law Foundation, who are working on renewables in New England. So I have reached out there, but I'm ashamed to say, that I have another job. And sometimes I run out of, but I have talked to Concord Can, I have talked to, Garrett Whitney and Janet Rothrock and Mary White, all of whom are Concord residents who are activists as well.
Okay. We are running behind schedule, but I would like to ask one last time, are there any other comments or questions on this topic?
We need to know anything more about the frequency with which the Concord Board of Health meets or makes decisions about such matters?
I don't know. My guess was once a month, because they put us on, what they said was their monthly agenda. And so that is coming up this coming Tuesday.
Okay. With that, let's move on. But Deborah, I want to thank you for highlighting this issue and bringing it to our attention. You have our support. I will be in touch with you to complete the letter and get it to the Board of Health by next Monday.
Jerry, do you want me to correct the letter in Word to bring it up to the most recent and send
Yes.
that to you? Okay,
Yes,
I'll
please.
do that. I'll do that right now. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. And thank you for the work you do.
Well, good luck.
Good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Jerry, this
Yes.
is Mike. I just wanted to say, I'm afraid I've got to drop off. I've got a couple of hungry kids and my wife is gone for the evening. So
Okay.
if I want to get them to bed on time without yelling and screaming, I'll look forward to the next meeting.
Okay. We look forward to having you formally on board. Thank you. for
Great, thank
joining.
you. Nice to meet everybody.
Bye.
And you.
Yep, bye.
Okay. Next agenda item is Envision Concord. So the background on this, actually, Matt, you might be able to fill in more, but the background on this is I got an email, I think from Terry Ackerman, who said that we're going to update Envision Concord, and we'd like to have a report from the various committees, of which we are one, of what we've done in the years since this came out in 2018. I have to admit, I was a little blindsided by this. This was not on my radar screen at all. I didn't even remember it. So I'm coming into this kind of cold. Now, they want the report by November 10th. So what I was thinking we would do is discuss this a little bit here today, and then prepare something for us to review in our October meeting. And then we could get it, after that, we could have it ready for the board before the November deadline. Matt, do you have anything or any knowledge, more knowledge of this to add to?
Well, I think that the idea is that Envision Concord Bridge to 2030 is a 10-year plan. And, here we are, a year and a half or so into that period. And I think there are two things we want to do. Is we want to just try to stay on track, and we want to remind people that that's out there and that these are the town's goals. And, to the extent possible, our committees, while new things do come up from time to time, they should be looking at this and kind of guiding their efforts based upon those lights. So I think that that's the idea, is to kind of figure out where we're at, what progress we've made, where we're behind, where we're ahead, and see if there's any corrective actions that are needed.
Okay, that's a good summary. Makes lots of sense to me. It's not a hesitancy, it's just an admission that I don't have background on this.
What other agencies have they approached?
You should have seen this letter went out to everybody. I mean, everybody. There are potentially hundreds of people looking at this letter and trying to decide what to do. Yeah.
Brad, you've got a comment?
It seems to me the biggest thing that's happened in our world since Envision Concord came out is that the Concord's Climate Action Plan came out. And as well as the state's Clean Energy and Climate Plan, which set some goals which were not there when Envision Concord was written. Those are some of the goals that we think about with our in our Concord Heat Electric Working Group, etc., which are pretty relevant to informing, where we think Concord should spend effort in going a certain direction, as well as Article 31, I guess. It's probably worth getting something in there.
Which letter are we referring to here? Is this a public letter, or is that something that was circulated somewhere else?
It was sent out by, I believe, well, the letter was prepared by Terry Ackerman. I think the letter was sent by Jeremy, forgetting Jeremy's last name. But it sounds like you did not receive it.
Well, this goes back to probably try to get the bloody website up to date, right?
Yeah,
the town website is a disaster. I mean, it's just a disaster.
I
my
sent
pet
a note.
peeve, right? I mean,
Yes, let me just say I agree with that, but let's not spend time on that.
yeah, sure, no, of course, yeah.
So Karen got the letter. I got the letter. Anyone else get the letter?
I got the letter. I'm looking for it in my email. I can't find it, but
All
It
right.
came out on September 8th via email from Jerry, is it Romano?
Yeah.
Romano?
no wonder I can't.
Let me see if I can find it and forward it to everyone. Hang on here a minute.
Oh,
Jerry with a G or Jerry?
Yep.
With a J?
got it.
Jerry with a J?
It's Jeremy.
Jeremy, sorry.
It sounds like the request was pretty open-ended for
Yes.
comment.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just sent it
I'm
to everyone.
sorry, because I was advocating for us to send out like a template.
When was
did not do
Envision
that.
Concord first created? What was the first year?
2018, it was created, but for really the period of 2020 to 2030 was the goal.
Um,
So, was anyone on this committee involved in that?
No, we put inputs in, we either our individual ideas, and the committee wrote a letter basically supporting things and
So
suggest-
CSEC wrote a letter.
Yeah.
With information in it.
Right.
And sent to Kate?
It was sent to the chairs of Envision Concord. Kate did not work.
Elise Woodward and who was it? Oh, and Gary Kleiman.
Yeah.
Those were the
So
contributors.
presumably I should be able to find this letter somewhere, maybe even in our Google Docs.
I can find it for you.
What's that?
I can find it for you, I think.
Yeah, if you would, that would help. Now, interestingly, as I look through the Envision report, there is precious little on sustainability as we interpret it.
I agree. There's relatively little,
You're
compared to
being
other
generous.
things like land planning and stuff. There's huge sections on that, but
Yeah,
you could see it was not their long suit. Yeah.
right. And I didn't see anything on CMLP. So this is, I actually kind of view this as an opportunity to bring this to broader attention, that there's just not enough emphasis in the town on sustainability and energy issues.
Yeah.
So one of the things that they, in the letter, they're asking for, and so I want to ask all of you for a brief couple minutes of brainstorming. What have been our accomplishments since 7/30/2018, which is when the report came out?
We ran our Heat Smart program that fall. There were some accomplishments to do with that, but I don't know that accomplishments during the time really.
What year was the Energy Fair? Was that in
2017?
2017?
That was earlier, but there was the landscaping fair.
Yeah.
There was the put together, the aborted sustainable home fair.
Well,
Put together a beautiful graphic that we can
We
still
put together
use.
the pamphlet,
Put
Yeah.
together the pamphlet that was gonna go with it.
which could still be used.
Yet.
So Brad, you were saying.
So, Concord's made some headway on, with some heat pumps and stuff like that. It seems to me we should add something about a reasonable set of goals to meet our climate goals in terms of helping residents electrify, which is what this committee is about, with maybe some target numbers.
Oh, so you're looking ahead.
I'm looking ahead. That's what the report is.
One thing that you might say is that a number of, or at least one large Concord public institution, the library, has implemented it and is in progress with a sustainability plan.
But how much did CSEC influence that?
Yeah. Right.
Well,
This is, at least for our report.
Yeah.
Back to the select board, we should be focused on what we've done. Well, two things. We should be focused on what we've done in the past, and then looking ahead
Right.
of what do we hope to do as a committee, and what do we want the town to do?
We've also done a lot of tabling at public events to about weatherization and promoting electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So maybe other things.
Another thing I would like to influence is whether or not they build any solar at Nuclear Metals in particular, and whether the town, more in general, whether the town pursues in-town solar, which CMLP seems to have very little interest in, or at least solving the technical challenges that keeping us from doing it at a bigger scale.
Right. Okay. So that's a similar thing to installing solar at the new CMS, new middle
Right.
school. But we could perhaps generalize that to encourage or demand solar on municipal buildings and other places. I mean, the town, we've not been especially aggressive in installing solar. We have some successes, but there are many more opportunities we could pursue.
Perhaps we could do a little inventory of commercial buildings and parking lots, and just in terms of area, and say, if we want to become renewable, besides, have renewable portfolio, we could, our committee would recommend more in-town solar using these facilities and doing what we can to solve the problems that would make those possible.
That has to do with the battery storage, right? Issue with solar.
There's so many ways to solve that problem. That's one way that you can do it. You can also curtail.
But I think the argument, I mean, CMLP has made, at least per the statement earlier in this meeting, they're way ahead of their plan, right? Or they're on track, or if not a little bit ahead. No?
Maybe not ahead of where we.
So are we disagreeing with 2030? Is that what we're disagreeing with?
No, I guess I see having some solar energy, more solar energy generation in the borders of Concord as a very important thing. Maybe it would make us
So you're
resilient.
arguing about the method by which they achieve it as opposed to whether they're achieving it or not.
Right. I'd like to see some resiliency in town to grid outages or something like that, possibly, or something. And as well as doing our part and hoping it just doesn't happen somewhere else.
Well, so I just want to follow up on, Hanny, your comments about CMLP's method. So their method, a big part of their method, or one of the key methods right now, is the purchase of RECs, which they acknowledge has some issues. So I think we could, at the same time, recognize the success they're having so far, but also point out we have greater expectations than meeting our needs through RECs.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's maybe a good way of presenting it, right? I mean, last time we had a discussion, we used the word punting, right? Because, right? I mean, that's, I think, the word we used last time. But that's a fair presentation. And I mean, CMLP has sort of a dual agenda. One is the sourcing of power. The other one is sort of the management of the power supply and the metering and everything. And where is the balance in their, where the balancing act, right? They were spending a lot of time on the metering stuff, which is a heavy investment.
Yeah.
Right. And they're taking, whatever they can take on the sourcing supply side.
Yeah. That's well put, because the metering came up in the meeting a few days ago or last week, whenever it was. And separately, Dave Wood commented to me when I asked about battery storage, where are we where's CMLP in terms of pursuing battery storage? And he said, well, it's a priority, but right now it's a third priority behind metering and time of use rates.
Yeah, and the metering has been a priority for the past 20 years, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not new, right? They went with Zigbee, they went with power over Ethernet, they went with all kind of crazy ideas. And yet we're still back at metering, right?
So
What were the two priorities above it? Metering, and what was the other one?
time of use
Sourcing.
rates.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's hard to relate how this all ties back to the envisioned plan.
Well,
Exactly.
yeah, so how this ties back is we will need to make some recommendations for the future. So this, I think they want a one-page report from us. And in that one page is, I imagine it, roughly half of it will be looking over our shoulders and the other half will be looking ahead. So the way this ties together is this is part of what I think we'll be looking ahead. So here's what I propose. I'll take based on this discussion, I'll cut it at a one-page letter and I'll bring to the next meeting that where we can review it and beat on it and revise it and then have it ready by after the meeting to send on to the select board. Does that sound okay with everybody?
That's good.
Can you distribute it before the next meeting so we can look
Yes.
at it and then we can discuss it at the next meeting?
Yes, that's the action I'll take. I'll distribute before the next meeting.
Thank you.
And it says recommended one page, you know, if it was double-sided.
You know, Brad, that's a great idea. Can you write the
8.5.
second side, please? Okay, let me just make a note to myself.
I think I already did.
Not to digress at all, but the question that I have, I'm looking at the section that was in the chair's update from the meeting minutes of August meeting, where you have an explanation of the meeting you had, Jerry, with Dave Wood and Pamela Cady regarding solar saturation, whether it's limiting the growth of PV in the town.
Yeah.
That whole issue, are you considering that as part of that future agenda? Because to me, that is like a huge hole. And it does not get properly addressed by CMLP in most conversations that I've heard.
So I hadn't thought specifically of that issue, but I had thought about batteries. Sufficient installation of batteries in Concord would alleviate that issue. So in that regard, I guess I'm answering you yes and no. No,
Well,
not in.
What I'm trying to imagine in my head is at what reasonable date in years even would Concord be in a position to allow local PVs of greater than 50 kilowatts?
The day after tomorrow, if they decided to, I think, that's my opinion, is
Well,
they're
why
they're
are,
not considering just curtailing or something like that, which would solve the problem. Maybe I meant figuratively the day after tomorrow, but
Yeah.
it's
So
not a 10-year problem. We've been talking about it for 5 years, for 3 or
Yeah.
4, but it's not a 10-year problem, I don't think.
so let me make one sort of concluding comment, and I'd like to move on the agenda because we're running behind here. The concluding comment is CMLP, in my opinion, has fallen behind on a number of things, and battery storage is particularly one of them. At the same time, compared to pretty much every other MLP in the state, Concord's CMLP is doing quite well on a variety of issues. So while it's fair to beat them up metaphorically on the battery issue or the metering issue or time of use is a similar thing, let's be fair and honest with all of ourselves that they're doing a lot of things right too. So I'm not trying to be an apologist for CMLP. I'm just trying to look at it as from a wide lens. Okay, so to summarize, before next meeting, I will distribute a draft of, maybe it's a single-sided one page, or maybe a double-sided one page. We'll see. Letter reflecting our comments here. And during that meeting, we will review and revise it as needed. Okay, next up, Brad, you wanted to give us a status on cooler.
Yeah. And I'm going to try not to take too much time, but I wrote up a little thing that I'll just walk you through, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
If I say share the screen here, go over here, hide my email. Okay. I have a two-pager that I can share with the committee called Cooler Concord. What was it? What is it? And what could it become? And just for, I didn't say, I didn't hit share yet. There it is. Now you see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had this, in 2016, the committee decided to host a big sustainability event, which we did in February 27, based on a book, Cooler, Smarter. And our town manager at that time, he allocated up to $65,000 to do this event and website, and also provide for some new rebate incentives. And he'd want to do this for a few years. This turned out to be our main focus for the whole committee for most of a year, led by Jill and Gilda and I. And so we had about 1,000 people come together, of which about 270 were just volunteers and students. Great participation by schools, including green teams, video classes, helping to produce some content, and very much supported by a superintendent. We made a website, a WordPress website, which Bartlett Interactive implemented, had a lot of good good actionable content, and new rebates for mowers, drying racks, heat pump water heaters, and a bunch of things which the fair showed people were interested in. And we had a newsletter using MailChimp, which Julie Klein has really been keeping going, and she is going away. And Facebook page. So residents selected actions totaling about 350 tons of annual CO2 savings, as estimated by the Carbon Points Estimator, which was something that I worked on, which was a network of Google Sheets and macros. And we did an analysis the following year after working pretty hard on follow-up that showed that the impact was about a little over 300 tons, in fact. So it wasn't totally made up. And I'd be happy to share that with you. This is a link to the report that I've shared with the committee before. I think only Janet was on the committee, and Doug joined as well for the fair. So more recently, there's this connection with Mass Energized, the nonprofit that I'm with. A lot of the ideas from the website that we did at that time were used in the original Mass Energized community platform. And the idea is trying to extend it to you to do more communities. We took this community points, carbon points estimator, and used it as the basis of a web app called the Carbon Saver. And we even had a Gilda got a grant from MAPC's digital team to prototype this thing. And a lot of the Cooler Concord ideas were taken up by a group called Cooler Communities out in Western Massachusetts, supported by a foundation which works closely with our nonprofit, but also does school-based fairs and sustainability programs in communities across Massachusetts. I'm very proud of this because they followed our example, and we should remember this is possible. We're not saving the planet here, but it really made for a number of things. Note that these communities are not Concord. They are tend to be less affluent places. We're offering our community platform now that we've been working on for a few years, very low cost around towns, and that we had a state grant for a fair amount of money as far as we're concerned for implementing, for improving it. Now, we've updated the Cooler Concord platform website to use this platform, and I can give you a really very quick look at it. I don't want to take lots of time because I know we're late. But we haven't had a local core group with the time and energy to run the site effectively, so we haven't promoted it much. Let me just give you a peek at what it is now. We've been working on it. Here is, this is a mirror to the platform. You can't go and see this yet, but I can see it. But, you know, pictures of places in the town, even people you might recognize. It's got actions and households and carbon reduction as elements of it. And events that you can now are, you know, we can post, we can use this as a platform to not only promote actions, but promote events. Actions being now things that you can filter by, you know, I'm a student, so I can ride my bike to school, or I want to do transportation, so I can buy an EV, things like that. And this, for nobody's seen this feature yet, except for me. I can say that it's worth 2.5 cars on the road, but if I decide I might want to put it in terms of trees, I hope it doesn't blow up because this is very new code. It's like it's like I planted 192 trees. And our platform has a bunch of teams on it, like the Concord Carlisle High School and First Parish. We can create things like this, but there's almost nobody here. You know, there's the number of people here is me and another guy, because we haven't promoted it yet. So there's a fair amount of good stuff here, and I promise that it's going to get a lot better as we implement some of the features we're talking about in the next 3 to 6 months. We're always a little slower than we might like. And some of the things that it could become, or it could be much more effective if we had 1 or more community admins to update and promote it, continually bringing in new participants, and they've been trained on the admin platform. We would need to keep a newsletter going and have social media. We should have more connections to schools and perhaps have some high school interns to help with it. And promoting would largely be due through community groups and stuff like that. To be successful, we should have some events fairly often, the kinds of things that we might like to do, small and big. But ideally, we'd also get some money from the town to promote stuff, because it actually does cost some money. You can do it for free, but you get what you get. And I don't know, a couple of other ideas that are maybe less important. But that's the status of the website now and the program as it exists. But I gave you the historical thing just to excite you as to, you know, what we could affect beyond our borders, perhaps. Now, because I work with the nonprofit, I haven't really tried to push this on the committee so much. I have a little bit, but I've been way too busy myself to do the admin side, to really try to rattle cages and stuff.
Okay. Well, that for me was very helpful. I was not on the committee at the time of the event. I'm not sure I was aware of the event. I was aware of the moniker, but didn't quite know what it implied. So kind of moving ahead into the next agenda item of which I've entitled Electrification Focus and Revitalizing Cooler Concord. This is really a continuation of what we discussed last month, and is in part a response to a discussion we had about the name Cooler Concord and perhaps and the names of other organizations or websites or programs. And I think Matt fairly succinctly commented that we have some brand equity with Cooler Concord, and we should try and take advantage of that. And that resonated with me, and I think it resonated with others. So in discussing with Brad this, he suggested, and I said, yeah, great idea. Give us an update. What's the history of Cooler Concord? What is it now? What could we do with it? And what I'm generally imagining is that we could do another fair or something like that. And Cooler Concord would be an element of that. It would be, it would be both a means of directing people to our events and getting the word out about the events, as well as people finding out about the website itself from the events. And I think they kind of would support each other. So I did a little brainstorming on this, and I sent a document around with my notes on it. Actually, I need to find it myself. Hang on a minute.
I wanted to mention one other thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
And at the Ag Fair on Saturday, I talked to Laura Davis from Mothers Out Front, and they have a group that is starting up to focus on residential engagement on electrification and other sustainable stuff. And I actually sent them a message today to invite them to come to invite one or two of them to come to the meeting, but I don't know that they got the message. But that's a nice opportunity, because that is a good group, very well focused, to work on this stuff with.
So I'm sorry, the group was Mothers?
Mothers Out Front.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sort of imagining, I'm not sure how the Cooler Concord Fair was done when it was done relative to other groups.
Lots of groups.
Okay, well, that's what I'm kind of imagining would be the same in terms of what we might do. Now, the other thing I'll mention, and then I'll pull up my notes, is Brad had sent me I think maybe you sent this to everybody, Brad, the thing on the Energize Acton.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I found that fairly stimulating. And what stimulated me was a series of events spread out over a week. And so I started thinking along those lines. And then researched what Cooler Concord did and saw that, well, that was primarily, a one-day concentrated event. And so depending on what time of day it is, I'm more in favor of one or the other. But I just wanted to sort of throw out my raw thoughts. And let me share my notes with you. So what did I call that thing? So,
The straw ban proposal.
right. Here we go. Okay. So whatever we do, so I'm assuming that over the next year, we're going to do something significant like a fair or a series of events. Beyond that, these notes don't assume one form or the other. But I try to start when I'm thinking about these things, I try to start with, what are the goals that I'm looking to accomplish or we're looking to accomplish? And I think it's pretty much what I've got listed here. The whole idea here is to, I think, accelerate electrification. That's what we generally reached consensus on a couple meetings ago, primarily focusing on residential, but not forgetting the commercial sector. I like to have some sort of measurable metric on what we're looking to achieve. And I just roughly is thought of, well, we should look to make contact with 500 to 1,000 residents. At the time, I didn't realize that there were stats from Cooler Concord and the raw number there, Brad, was about 1,000. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes we have exaggerated slightly high, but it was close.
Okay, close enough, And I noticed, your comment earlier about, well, there were a couple hundred volunteers, but that's fine too. But I think that's a nice round number, whatever we do. I mean, whatever we do, we need to have some impact. And one way to measure impact is how many people are we contacting? It's not the only way, but that's one way. I mentioned, about Cooler Concord, the website. I see this as playing a material role here. Ultimately, I think the real goal here would be, we've got to generate some energy, some motivation for people to take action. So I'm not going to go through this whole list, but suffice to say, here's just a brainstorm of different things we could do. I'm not imagining that we could do all of them, certainly not, but maybe we could do, I don't know, half a dozen or 10 of them or something, whether it's in a single day fair or a multi-day event. So at this point, I'd like to just kind of open the floor for folks to make comments in terms of good, bad, or indifferent, or other ideas. Let me start with just a question. Do folks have a preference for a single day fair like Cooler Concord was originally, or the landscaping fair, or a week-long series of events? Or it could be more than a week, could be 10 days or 2 weeks.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, Jerry, in relationship to the timing of a longer term event, I've been particularly interested in the relationship of what is happening at the library in terms of their commitment to being a source of education for sustainability and a way to find out about sustainability practices. And they're going to have the ability to have programming in the library space if we work it out with them, to augment their own sustainability program. And I can imagine that a program that we wanted to put on could be put on through that context.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
I don't see that the kind of fair, like the Cooler Concord Fair, or, when there's a whole lot of tables and examples, the library isn't big enough for that. Though, I think things with the library, the keynote address from, climate change, energy, luminary could easily be in the library. And I'm a personal friend of Kerry Emanuel, who is an MIT climate scientist, and I'm sure I could ask him to come and give a talk.
Well,
It's possible to imagine that the same way when we did the Cooler Concord Fair, a percentage of it was, or at least for the landscaping fair, was outdoors. Now, I know that's weather dependent, but potentially you could arrange a spring event that would happen where part of it was tabled outside in the entry areas of the library or on the grass in front of the main entry of the library.
Yeah, for the landscaping fair, we did have a rain plan that we were going to bring it inside to the cafeteria. And I don't see the library.
But they're going to have one of the things I've learned about the library is that they are going to have an area of the library where daytime programming, not just evening programming for seminars and presentations of, I think of up to, I don't know what the numbers, but it's like 150 or more people
I think
at
we're
a
getting-
time.
Yeah, but I think the issue in my mind, look, the vehicle, whether it's the library or some other location, fine, right? I think we need to figure out what is the focus. This is a long list of items. What can we actually really do, right? Is it one event, 2 events, 5 events? Is it all the content for the websites? And then when we decide what event, where are we going to do it and how are we going to do it? But I think this is a long list of items here, right? That's where we need to concentrate first on what is it we want to focus for maybe the next year or next 6 months.
So I think that multiple events with different groups leading each event may be coordinated by a steering committee involving us is a better way of than thinking about CSEC doing all these events, or even more than one event, or maybe 1.5 events or something, and then I can imagine something along the lines of like 7 of these things or something. You could, if you had the mothers out front, you have the schools, you have the library, you have all these groups that you can bring together to do several things that might be really something to celebrate.
so that's kind of the way I started thinking about this, was that it was following the Energize Acton plan, where I think there were 6 or 7 events, very, very different kinds of things. And I'm not sure exactly why, but I felt attracted to this idea that, well, we'd have an event per day, something on Monday night at the library, something on Tuesday for the business community, something on Wednesday, blah, 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 and we do that in a coordinated fashion such that it generates attention. Then I looked at Cooler Concord and I saw what Cooler Concord did. And I saw that, well, gosh, getting a bunch of people in the one place on one day, that's a pretty powerful thing. So I don't, at the moment, I don't particularly have a preference for the style. But I do like the idea, and the way I was thinking of it is that, CSEC wouldn't do all the events. We might do some of them, but we'd arrange for other groups to develop and sponsor and pull off an event. And that, that would be one of several that we've got going on. And as for that list, yeah, that's a long list. We couldn't possibly do all of that. But again, it was a brainstorm. I was just sort of dumping ideas as they came out. I'm looking to not overlook anything significant.
One of the things that has been on my mind a little bit, when I think about what Kate accomplished last year with the dashboard site on sustainability for the town, I think in my imagination, she was trying to make this into a sort of a digitalized center for information in Concord about sustainability operations and what could be done and what could be found. And all the things on your list represent, in a way, a collection of things that represents all the kinds of things that are going on in the town. But there's not really a center where all this stuff can be kind of brought together and understood. And every time I talk to different people, you know, there's another site to go to find out more kinds of information that are slightly different, but
That's what we discussed last time, Doug. Last time, Doug, we talked about the Concord and the site that Brad presented and the Cooler Energy. And we thought we should leverage its brand and turn it into event content portal to direct people into
good.
hear all the things. That's what we talked about last time. I
For
think.
Cooler Concord.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Right.
what that was one of the ideas. And I think it's reflected in the minutes, I believe.
Yeah. And so, you know, however whatever structure we choose, a single day fair or a multi-day series of events, I see Cooler Concord playing a major role in this. You know, if someone says, gee, you know, what is this event at the library that's happening? Say, go check out Cooler Concord. You know, you'll see
Right.
it there and the other stuff that's going on.
Well, then it behooves us to consider really trying to promote Cooler Concord in the context of the new library environment.
I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Well, to advocate that that's a go-to place for their information around the town as they project their agendas for sustainability.
You mean the library projecting their agendas?
Yeah. Encourage them to use the Cooler Concord site as the portal for the town. Well, not just for the town, because obviously you can't replace the town site, but as one of the major leading places to get information about what's going on. And in that regard, the library becomes a physical representation of a dashboard, and the Cooler Concord kind of represents another kind of portal dashboard. It's virtual.
Karen's been trying to say something, but
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. So go, Karen, go ahead.
It was Sharon, not me.
Oh, Sharon, okay.
So I see sort of two options here, and maybe it's, you know, 1 year and then the next year, that either we have, perhaps the first year we work on, we're going to have a new Cooler Concord fair next spring. And between now and then, we have tabling events where we go to Mothers Out Front meetings, MCAM meetings, library meetings, Rotary clubs, and we have pamphlets and we say, we're having this event, please come. That would be one, we'd have one big event, but we'd have lots of little touch points to educate, let people know that we're going to be having this event. The other thing, the other thought is that we sort of take the heat pump and EV show on the road, and we let all these groups know, we'd love to come talk to, you know, your club or your organization about sustainability. And we have a couple of cans. We can do EVs, we can do heat pumps, we can do, you know, if solar, you know, if you have particular interests, let us know.
One potential group that isn't down here is the League of Women Voters of Concord and Carlisle, which I know has a sustainability group. So they may well be interested in participating or interacting or hosting a meeting about some of this stuff.
Right. So Sharon, to follow up on your comment, I like the idea of sort of having a somewhat canned presentation for key topics like heat pumps and EVs that we could go to different organizations with. And I was thinking especially for business organizations. if we created 2 or 3 small slide sets, then we could fan out and give these presentations to, various groups. We started down that path at one point.
Isn't that, Jerry, isn't that already on the Concord website, the sustainability website?
You mean the information?
Yeah, the information is there. And that was sort of the comment that we discussed last time, and I don't want to regurgitate that, but I mean, it's just the content is available, right? It's out there, and the question is how to get to it, and right, and that's sort of, can we facilitate that process somehow? I know Matt was mentioning
Promote it
something.
as well.
Yeah, promote it as,
Promote it,
and make
yeah.
it very visible and promote it, right?
So
Yeah. Matt, you want to comment?
Yeah, I would say you're on the right track there. What I was suggesting is, yeah, kind of a hub, a clearinghouse, an umbrella, something, that really gets people to the info that they need. And maybe you have some original content as well. I mean, like the website that Brad was showing off, that there's there. But I would say to that end, a key missing element of this plan is social media. And so you really, social media is the way to make that happen, much more than a website.
and
There is a Facebook page, a Cooler Concord Facebook page, which
All
Brad.
right. Well, it just needs a daily post
it needs
and lots of followers and lots of stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
turn it into Instagram rather than Zuckerberg's page.
Or Instagram or TikTok,
Yeah.
all the stuff in the demographic you're looking for.
as I see it, our work is partly about information, getting information out there. But the hard work is about hand-holding. The hard work is about getting people to take the information and take a step in the right direction and call somebody and get someone over to their house. And so that has to be a part of, that's what the Cooler Concord Fair was about, is people, they came and there was some information there and they selected stuff and there was follow-up and there was, it was a lot more than information. And the sites with lots of
Kind of like
information.
the funnel, the sales funnel. You start at the
Yeah.
top, you've got to get your prospects and your suspects and, all that, right? Suspects, prospects.
Well,
lead.
I think there's the issue of having the information available. And then there's a separate but related issue of how do you get it to people?
Yeah.
Do you push it out or is it a push or a pull operation?
And then if you get further down, then you get into this, make it actionable, get it so that they actually go buy an EV.
Yeah. So for example, I'm imagining in the business community, there's just not a whole lot of recognition of what can be done, what's possible, or why they should make an effort. And so I'm thinking, we'll take it to them. We'll go give them the information that's on the website. We're not creating anything new, but we're delivering it to them through a different means to kind of prime the pump, to get them to say, okay, well, all right, we understand now more and we can get more from Cooler Concord. But how do we get them to go to Cooler Concord in the first place? I think that's where we have to have an outreach effort. Man, this isn't meant to do in lieu of social media. It's in addition to social media. Social media I see as that's a push too. Our going out would be a push effort. And the social media is a push effort too.
And one comment I have is I think the business outreach is important, I don't necessarily see that as fitting in the same umbrella. And I don't think, I don't see a value to a Cooler Concord brand necessarily for reaching to the business community. But I could be wrong about that. But maybe by packaging it slightly different and doing it not necessarily at exactly the same time or the same event, it might be more effective. They are quite different. And so if you try to accomplish both at once, you might compromise both.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I noticed, Brad, that looking through Cooler Concord, that there are already a lot of links that go right into the town sustainability site in a fairly selective way. And
Yeah.
it strikes me that that's an effort to be a portal to the town website, as opposed to the confusion of the top level of the town website. Is that true or not?
Yeah, it's trying to say, okay, here is something. Maybe it's heat pump water heaters. This is something you could do. This is what they look like. What do you do? Well, here's a step. Go read this. Do that. It isn't. There is a great danger to try to put up a new website with new information. It's because half of it'll be wrong in 6 months. You should take advantage of what we have and try to make it more accessible, I think.
Sharon, I'd like to go back to your comment, your thought of, maybe we plan some smaller events over the next few months with the aim of having a bigger event in the spring or something like that. So was that, were you thinking of the bigger event being like the original Cooler Concord, or something different or less ambitious, or I don't know? What, can you elaborate a little bit? Because I hadn't thought of sort of doing both, smaller, sooner events and a bigger later event.
Well, I was thinking the smaller, sooner events would mostly be promoting the bigger event coming up. Although we could also have, to the extent we're available, we could have more substantive conversations with groups. And as far as what the event looks like, I think that's for us to decide, but I'm imagining something between the sustainable home event that we were working on before COVID and a repeat of the Cooler Concord Fair. I think marketing is sort of our charge, and we have to just sort of keep beating the drum. It's okay that if we haven't created something new, we just need to keep telling people.
Right. So
Jerry, one thing that we had created when we did the poster for the Cooler Concord, the home of the future home.
Yeah. Your sustainable home now.
The sustainable home now. There were some trial page PowerPoint slides that had all that information and went through it, that could be hypothetically used in a webinar structure.
I don't remember that. So there were some draft posters prepared?
There weren't posters, there were PowerPoint presentations of all that poster related information in it.
Yeah.
And if somebody was going to do a 1 hour overview for a group or something like that, it could easily be used for that.
Yes. Yes. Well, again, I forget who brought this up. Maybe it was you, Sharon, of taking, quote unquote, taking the heat pump and EV show on the road. I was thinking the way to do that was we have a canned presentation that, maybe it's very specific on heat pumps and or EVs, or maybe it's your sustainable home now, or maybe
we have a draft of one that it would be considered your sustainable home now.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Now that you mention that, I do remember that there was a draft. All right, so at this point, we've got about 10 more minutes to go. And still a couple of quick topics. Well, let me ask one more question here, see if we get some feedback. How to say this? I guess we kind of have maybe 3 different generic possibilities here. Go all in on one big event, like Cooler Concord was one possibility. The second possibility is a series of individual events over the course of a week or more. And the third is maybe kind of a hybrid, of, well, we do some smaller events over the next several months to generate interest in a bigger event that we would do later in the spring. Can we just each quickly weigh in on preferences?
I like
start-
your suggestion best. to
Yeah,
have
which one you,
small things And then leading up to a big event.
yeah. So I'm sorry, Janet, I missed that. Could you say it again?
I said, I like your last idea of having small events leading up to a big event.
Okay. Sharon? You're shaking your head.
Same, spread out over some time, not like all in one week. That would,
Okay,
Oh, yes, definitely.
Doug?
I like the third idea too, but I'd like to imagine that some of the small events that lead to the larger event could be some kinds of things that are programming at the library.
Yeah. Brad?
I don't have any appetite for a big event.
Okay.
I lived that one, and it was a half-time job for 3 of us for about 3 months. So I really like the idea of a series of events, but I'm not saying that I don't like the idea of events, a lot of promotion, like Sharon said, along the way.
Okay. Haney?
Yeah, I'm on board with the smaller events. I think it makes sense. It's more manageable, and I think we have probably more opportunities to fine tune and target if we want to do something like that.
Okay. Karen?
So I also like the series of smaller events spread out over time. I wouldn't mind if it led up to a bigger event, but perhaps not something sort of on the scale of Cooler Concord or even maybe the Landscape Fair, but which is the one that I've had experience with. But something that can really showcase the work that maybe we did on the Your Sustainable Home or some of the other things that we've been talking about here.
Did I miss anybody?
We still have
Okay.
the open question of maybe subject to our next meeting is to discuss the idea around Cooler Concord. I mean, I've spent some time on it, and I can see where Brad is coming from. This is more sort of I call it a personal scorecard of what you can do, basically. It's designed to take action on a personal level about, hey, go and install a heat pump and see what happens, et cetera, et cetera. And you can multiply it at multiple levels. It's slightly different than I think what we talked about, but I can see the benefit of it, because in terms of keeping track of all the different things one can do, right?
Yeah.
Certainly doing something like that Cooler Concord Fair was really complicated because we were all asked to write 1-pagers, which were to be handouts to people. And then there was a carbon calculator with all these forms that people were filling out. I mean, that made it much, much more work than the landscaping fair.
Okay.
That led to the 300 tons.
Well, it gave you data, but there was a lot of work gathering that data.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I will take all this feedback and along with this brainstorm list, come back to the committee next time with a refined straw man that's less of a little more of a plan and a little less of a brainstorm, and see if we can get behind that.
I thought it was pretty good brainstorm you did. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. I tried to not leave out anything too obvious and then put a little structure around it, but thank you. So we're running quite a ways behind. I hope folks don't mind staying over for 5 or 10 minutes if it takes that. But I'd like to touch on liaison reports briefly if anyone has any. Janet, do you have anything to report from the EV working group?
We obviously talked about the event last night, so I
Right.
won't say anything about that. But on Saturday at the book fair, there were actually 4 electric vehicles there. 2 are up on the patio lawn. And there was a VW ID4, a Mustang Mach-E, and then there were 2 on the street. I don't think many, there was a Tesla and there was a Bolt on the street. I don't think anybody really looked at the ones that were on the street, but there was certainly some interest in those newer EVs.
Good, good. Doug?
I have not been to the CAB meeting. I need to get back on that schedule, and I'll talk to Jake Swenson and try to have something more next meeting.
I think they're meeting tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, or Thursday night. I think they're coming up soon, so you should check out right away when their next meeting is, because I'm pretty sure it's this week.
Okay.
And they're having a strategizing exercise a little bit like this. So I don't know how much you'll get out of it, but good to pay attention to what they're thinking about.
They're doing it virtual still too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the next item is date and a time for the next meeting. The calendar still shows the meetings that Kate had set up, that which are at 3:30 on a Thursday, I think. Would anyone be opposed if I set up recurring meetings on Tuesday nights? So this is what, the second Tuesday night of the month. Would anyone have issues if we continue to meet for the next, year or so on the second Tuesday of every month? Same bat time, same bat channel?
No,
In general, no, I might have trouble next month.
Okay.
That would be the 12th, right? 12th of October.
That would be the 12th.
Yeah, I have a conflict as well.
Okay. But generally, otherwise, it looks okay. Doug, you were going to say something?
I was gonna look at my calendar.
are they worse than Wednesdays or better than Wednesdays?
Wednesdays are all clear for me. Thanks. I have like 4 different things I'm doing over the next 4 months. All happen to be on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. Sorry.
I
Wednesday.
have something every Wednesday.
Oh.
So I'm in,
Any reason why we're changing from Thursday?
Right, we were previously meeting on Thursdays, which are fine with me, generally speaking.
no, I'm suggesting Tuesdays because that's the way it's worked for us, I think, last couple. Well, no, I guess we've met on Thursdays.
Yeah.
We don't also, it was,
So,
there was
we
a
could-
reason, this month, a Jewish holiday. that
Yeah, yeah,
we
that's
wanted to
what
make
happened this month. So actually Thursdays was the day that we were originally scheduled for the year. but the timing was awkward for several people being at 3:30. So that initiated a change to meet at 7, which I think has worked out better for everyone. So would there be fewer conflicts, you think, if we did this on Thursdays instead of Tuesdays?
I want to just remind us, I think part of the reason we went to earlier in the afternoon, it was partly this pandemic, we're meeting on Zoom, we can. Or a lot of people had the flexibility that they could, but I think it was also for Kate. And
Yeah.
we don't have a sustainability director right now, but when we get one, we might want to reconsider if we can, because it would be good to have that person attend. And
Yeah.
it's a burden to ask them to work all
Okay.
day and again in the evening.
Okay, I do recall that, Sharon, and that's a very good point.
I think that we should shoot for the either the Tuesday or Thursday, the 12th or the 14th next month, and then reassess.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, let's, as Sharon suggested, let's wait till the new sustainability director's on board before we set up a standard time and date. But for next month, so 2 of you have already said Tuesday night is not a good night.
Thursday
So-
would be better for me.
Good.
I
for me.
can't do Thursday,
Okay, the 14th.
the 14th I am out.
All right, I'll send out a doodle poll.
I hate to do that.
And
That
hopefully-
I really want to get away from that, but it sounds like it's not quite time. So I'll do it again.
We
So-
hopefully will have a sustainability director by next meeting too.
Right,
Perhaps.
right.
Yep. Yeah, and I might be able to do it on Tuesday. It's just I'll be traveling that day, and it could be difficult.
All right. Well, again, I'll send out a doodle and
We can get rid of the 3:30 meetings that are on
yeah,
the regular.
that needs to be wiped off the calendar. I've tried to get that done and have not had any success.
Okay.
But I'll try again. Okay. We have an item for public comment, but I don't think we have any other public people on here. We have only private people. So before we adjourn, does anyone have any other topics or things they want to bring up before we close the evening?
I think between now and the next meeting, if I can, I would like to at least make a contact with people at the library to find out a little bit more about what their programming thing is looking like. And Sharon, you had mentioned maybe you'd been interested in that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll
Would you
dig up
be
the name. I'll dig up the contact name and send it to the committee.
Yep.
And I'll try and do that sooner than later. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
We've got seconds. All in favor? Take off.
All right. Have a good
All right.
one.
Good night, folks. Thanks for a
Night.
great meeting.
Good night.